Hi there. This is Dr. Knotts. I want to talk to you. Take it easy, Daisy. That's my schmoodle. I want to talk to you today about the melancholy. We're doing lectures on the four temperaments, and sorry for taking so long to get this one out. I'm going to try to get some more of these videos done as far as health allows. So I want to talk to you today about the melancholy. The melancholy is my favorite of all the four temperaments. I believe we all have a bit of melancholy in us. It's what gives us color in life. The melancholy, whenever I hear that term, I always think of the Smashing Pumpkins song, Tonight, from the Melancholy Sadness album. But the melancholy is a really colorful individual. If you study the scriptures, and I do, and I always look at temperament analysis as I'm going through the Bible, and I like to know why people were the way they were, what their backgrounds were, what it was that put them together, how they respond. There are more melancholies in the scriptures than all the other three combined. The melancholy, Jesus would have shown great melancholy characteristics in his human side. He was perfect. He was divine and man. But how do we identify the melancholy? The melancholy is a very gifted individual. Often they know it, but they won't tell people. They're not proudful. They're not boisterous. They aren't trying to prove anything to the world. Actually, like I was studying Roy Buchanan, one of the most gifted guitarists of the 60s and 70s, one of the most unknown guitarists of our era. Son of a preacher man. But he loved, his greatest hit is The Messiah Will Return. But if you study his way he wrote music and the way he played music, very eclectic, gathering together, but he was a forerunner. Many of the greater guitarists to come out of the 70s and 80s took their techniques from Roy Buchanan. Jimi Hendrix took some of his techniques from Roy Buchanan. But Roy Buchanan was very phlegmatic, very melancholy. He was a melancholy phlegmatic, and as a result, he never pushed for success. He could care about success. Melancholies are that way. They have the ability to attune to greatness, to great feats, but they're not driven by that. Melancholies are highly analytical. Melancholies understand more about people and things than most want to. When I was coming out this morning to the office, I was thinking about turning my chickens loose. And my wife hates chickens, wants to get rid of every last one of them. And I thought about that, and I thought about how many people never take into consideration the feelings and the emotions in the animal kingdom. I have a squirrel I feed, I call Squirrely, and my schmoodle, she's only this big if you've seen Daisy here. She beat that poor squirrel up and about killed it. And when I come out and seen that her and Buster were bullying that squirrel, I yelled at him and said, "Bad dog," and the squirrel looked dead. So I went and picked it up by the tail and lifted it with a shovel so it wouldn't bite me. But the squirrel was crying. It broke my heart, so I prayed and asked God to heal it, and I put it up in a very safe place in a tree. And it came back alive after about 4 hours, and Squirrely's running around again. But animals have incredible emotions. They have character. Everything has life. I called the children out the other night, in the middle of the night, to look at blades of what are called goldenrod. Goldenrod look like weeds during the day. They're not very attractive in the flower kingdom. But they're called goldenrods, true goldenrods, because at night they catch the moonlight and they literally glow like rods of gold with spores coming out the sides. They're incredibly beautiful. Kids had never seen that. Dean had never seen it. A melancholy is highly analytical. So you're seeing the melancholy side of me today. They will want to know why a person is the way they are. And for this reason, they love people for who they are. A melancholy will accept people for who they are and love them. Melancholies are left brain predominant, like the sanguine. But unlike the sanguine who makes and drops friends at the top of a hat, everybody's a sanguine's friend. It's like that Labrador puppy. It'll climb in the lap of whoever lets it. Sanguines not that way. Sanguines don't make friends that easily, but when they do, they're lifelong friends. I mean, you can be gone 10 years out of one of them's life, and you call that melancholy up, and that melancholy will do what it can for you. It'll try to be there for you, you know? So they're very analytical. They understand people. They're also very aesthetic. I use this terminology. In other words, they know how to dampen a raging fire. They know how to keep things from getting out of hand. Melancholies are the kind of people that during the 70s, during my 70 years, I would have likened to the one listening to the Moody Blues album, wanting you to smoke weed with them. They're very laid back. They do like to enjoy life. This is what gives them another bit of purpose and drive. The melancholy is perhaps it is the most self-sacrificing of all the temperaments. When you find somebody that wants to give, it's a melancholy. A choleric, they'll say, I'm not going to give to this. They should have worked harder. They should have invested better. Phlegmatic, it'll give, but it'll think out the reasons why it should give and how it's going to benefit it in the long run. Not a melancholy. Melancholy, if you have a need, they'll go into their own refrigerator and give you their food. They'll give you the shirt off their back, literally. Melancholy feels the compassion for others and seeks to meet their need. They're very self-sacrificing. They'll take jobs to where, they have the ability to earn double, triple what they're doing, but they'll take jobs where they're paid much less because they see the need to help others there. So I think you're getting the understanding of it. They are highly industrious. In other words, they do like to stay busy. Now, they enjoy, by nature, they're introverted. They're not as introverted as a phlegmatic, but they're more introverted than a choleric and a sanguine put together, times 10. Melancholy is one of those persons that likes to sit back next to a fire or have some cool music on and read a book. They greatly enjoy reading, taking in the arts. They love the arts more than everybody else put together. And it's because they can understand what goes through an artist's mind. They can understand the emotions and they can attach. They're very emphatic. Empathy is the ability to feel the emotions of others. They are self-disciplined. It's not uncommon for a melancholy to sit down and make a list, a to-do list, a bucket list, a list of things that need to be done first, and then try to work through them. So they sound like they're the greatest thing since Humble Pie, a band from the 60s. But they do have their weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. We're all human. This is what makes us human. Perhaps what could be the greatest strength, but also the greatest weakness, is their moodiness. There's no other way to put it. A melancholy can be moody. They can they can get downright nasty, bitter, hateful, resentful, self-centered. If you get a choleric melancholy, they will be the most self-centered people on the planet. And they don't care. A choleric melancholy, primary, secondary, especially if it's a 60-40 mix, will not care about other people. They'll care only about themselves. When you find people that suffer from what are called in psychology self-defeating personality complex, it's part of the personality disorders that was found primarily around pages 620 to 680 in the old DSM-4, DSM-5, but they are the kind of person that is persecution prone. They like to tell you about how they were done wrong. They're the greatest ones of the done wrong song of the country era, or the Eagles, somebody done somebody wrong song. They find a sense of self-identity in how they've been persecuted. Because of this, they can also be revengeful. If you've got that caloric in there, you don't want to offend a caloric melancholy, because melancholy can get even. They are very touchy. if you've ever heard the expression, they wear their emotions on their sleeve, it's melancholy. And you can kid around with somebody, but when you kid around with a melancholy, because they're touchy, they'll get all up bent out of shape. They're highly theoretical. This is what I hate about them. They have a theory on everything, and they think they're right. Until you show them they're wrong, they're know-it-alls in their theories. And I've met some people that really get under my skin because they're trying to talk to me on a subject of which I'm an expert in. They don't know I'm an expert in it. And I don't tell them I'm an expert in it, but because they read a first-year book in college or a second-year book in college, they believe they're an expert. What they don't understand is the deeper things that create the situations. They only have the surface level knowledge. Melancholies tend to be very theoretical, but they won't stay in that first or second year college realm. They will go on later in life, and they will keep analyzing and studying. And for this, their paradigms will change over time. They will mellow, they will season like a fine wine, and they will become very knowledgeable on a subject. They tend to be unsociable. In other words, if you go to a party, they'll be standing against the wall, and they'll have that smile on their face like a phlegmatic. They'll cling to a friend that they go with. They tend to be very critical and negative in their thinking. What do I mean by that? They're hyper-evaluating, especially in terms, because of their ego, of themselves and how something is geared towards them, how it is affecting them personally. Unfortunately, because of their critical thinking, they often evaluate things wrongly. And this is another weakness of theirs. It's one that really bothers me, because I have met many where I've had good intentions, but they've determined that I didn't, or that I was doing something for the wrong reason, because they're too critical in their thinking, and they tend to, once again, have that self-defeating personality complex where they think everybody's wanting to do them wrong sometimes. So, summing it up, the melancholy has got more places in the Bible than all the others put together. They're the richest of all the temperaments. They see the emotions, they love music, they love the arts. They're highly analytical, they're self-sacrificing, they're gifted, they tend to be a perfectionist type. They may not achieve it, but they do try for it. But they are hypersensitive and emotional in nature. They love the arts more than anything else. They're an introvert. They like to stay in. They are not sociable. They can live by themselves most times with very little human contact. They have a variety of moods. They're bipolar by nature. They can be all the way up here, happy, euphoric. 2 days later, they're all the way down here, just life sucks. It's the most depressing thing and the gloomiest thing. And if you ever walk in on a gloomy period of a melancholy, it's like going into something out of a fantasy novel where the land is dead and everything is dark. They can pee on a parade more than anybody else. And I've actually told one that. I said, you can pee on any parade. What do you mean? I said, rather than seeing the things that are joyful, you like to just pee all over it. So not only do you not enjoy it, the people in the parade don't enjoy it. Nobody can stand watching it. I said, try to find some joy in life. Quit being so dark. You have to temper that melancholy so they will be motivated to do things right. Now, we look at the melancholy and some of the greatest achievers in the history of man. Mozart, Bach, melancholies. They can have the greatest of aspirations and reach to heights that nobody else can do because they are exceptional in their analytical abilities, their depth, their perception, their ability to feel empathy. They can write music that will mend and break and bend and twist the hearts of others. It's a wonderful thing. They are the most dependable of all the temperaments. You can trust a melancholy. Melancholy tells you they're going to do something, they're going to do it. If they tell you they're a friend, they're your friend. Melancholies are the kind that when they get married, they can't understand why their spouse would cheat on them. Because it doesn't come into their mind. They don't have thoughts like that. Um, because they're withdrawn, they won't try to start new projects. They won't try to take the lead. So if you're hiring somebody and they're a melancholy, if you're hiring them to be a part of a crew or work with a group, you will do okay. Do not hire them to be the head of the project. You don't know if they're going to be in a good way or a bad way. You don't know if they're going to see doom behind every door, because their analytical mind, they will be able to find all the problems that you're going to have. They are great on a brainstorming committee, because you can say, hey, I got an idea for this new patent I want to do. They'll look at it, and within 10 minutes, they'll say, well, here's your problem. You need more tenacity here. You're going to need to have a higher tempered metal with a lighter resistance frame. They'll be able to tell you the statics and what shortcomings and downfalls will be. So they're very thorough. Once they're like a dog on a bone. He's going to dig into that bone and get every bit of meat. So what they do is they can accomplish great good with their natural abilities. God uses the melancholy probably more than everyone else. They have the most natural potential. They tend to be prone to depression. They like to, trust me, they like to party. More melancholies will be on prescription medications for mood and enhancements than all the others put together, which to me is a very bad thing. They have a hard time sometimes learning to live just for the sake of living. They will carry with them many disadvantages. Primarily what we just spoke about, their negativism, their pessimism, and the spirit of criticism. They in the teenage years, melancholies are the ones that tend to lead the group because everybody wants to be around them. But they will criticize and tear others apart with a gift like a caloric, especially if you have a caloric melancholy. Their tongue will be the greatest of weapons, and they can do incredible damage to other children's psyches. You can pretty much figure that the first reaction a melancholy will have when they get in to see somebody or see something or a new experience is they will see the negative and pessimistic side. That is their trait. That is what they will do. And that is what will limit them in their vocational or their ability to work more than anything else. So, good things. Let's think about a good thing. Well, a good thing is if you have them on a project or a planning committee or they're part of a teen youth group or something, the minute you come up with a new project, boom, their mind starts analyzing it, rolling the tumblers. And if you can point them in a positive direction, when they bring up anything negative, you just don't give any emphasis to it. You have to push it aside without them knowing it and say, you know, you're right about that. Let's move on. How about this? Have you considered this? Ask them a question. Don't tell them what to do. You have to be inferring. You cannot be direct. If you infer to the melancholy, they will say in their mind, I need to know this. They don't really know this. I can teach them this. Let me show them what it is. They will take that dominant internal advocate position and they will start running through the numbers. And I'm telling you, before the meeting's over, they will have 2, maybe 3 different proposed means by which you can achieve your goal. They can concoct every problem. They're great for computer programming. If you can get a phlegmatic that's melancholy with a trilionary caloric, you'll have the greatest computer programmer you can ever have. So, most psychologically disturbed children, this is a negative, are melancholies. This is the part I don't like to talk about, but we have to talk about it because if you're in the field of counseling, especially with child psychology, I went and worked with an individual at the DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, to analyze and possibly the director of a work they got going. Most of your disturbed children will be melancholy because of all the above things we talked about. They will come from homes where there is a strong caloric and melancholy presence, where one of the parents is melancholy, one is caloric. That is a seedbed for destruction in the psyche of a child. Sociopaths, psychopaths will come from a home to where there is sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies amongst one of the parents, maybe 2. But they always come from a home where one of them is a melancholy, usually the submissive, and the dominant is a full-blown caloric. That will create a child, and I'm going to do a lecture here in a few on physical, emotional, intellectual, somnambulous, which predates the temperament. That's the part of the mind that is before the temperament, are created in homes where there's a caloric melancholy. So, because calorics are pretty hard to please and melancholies are impossible to satisfy. Have you ever, as a parent or somebody that's known a child, have you ever had somebody that you just can't satisfy? You buy them something new, they want something else then. They're impossible to satisfy. They have an unquenchable need for more. For this reason, if you have a melancholy parent with a caloric and the child comes home with a B, B minus, A minus, rather than focusing on saying, oh, you did so wonderful, little Susie or Bobby, I can't believe you got that B, that is great. They'll say, why couldn't you get an A? Couldn't you have tried harder? Wouldn't it have been worth getting a better grade? I mean, they'll immediately point out the negatives of the child, beat them down, and cut them up. Melancholies not only don't encourage very often, but what they do is they will criticize and carp and censure that child to the point where that child feels like it can never please that parent. This creates a great amount of repression within their psyche. It creates what we'd call a boxing in syndrome, similar to autism. And what happens is the child will repress this anger and this resentment and become sociopathic in their thinking. So, Asperger's is a symptom of a melancholy caloric dominant family scenario. So, the thing is the child won't be able to please a melancholy and a caloric, and that'll create a sociopathology within them. What needs to happen with a melancholy when they're dissatisfied with themselves, because they often are, is they need to do the self-examination from the scriptures. Know that God is pleased with them, that God loves them, that we're not ever going to be perfect, we're not ever going to be able to attain perfection. But the Bible's very clear, when we fail, we should try to get up, because Jesus has given us the victory. If we say we sin, the truth is not in us, and we're a liar. But if we sin, God is faithful and justified by the courts of heaven to forgive us of our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. God is there for us. Melancholies interpret life according to themselves. And once again, that can be a good thing, that can be a negative thing. It's like a teenage mentality that they never are able to overcome. Unfortunately, they get that mentality when they're 6 or 7, so it's something they have their whole life. So this brings us down to their self-centeredness. Because of their sensitive nature, they wear their emotions on their sleeve. They're very thin-skinned, very touchy. They can take things badly for no reason at all. What can happen is they won't express the anger. They'll repress it many times. So it will sit in their mind. They won't forget about it. Melancholies are like an elephant. They really rarely forget anything. They may be able to release the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, but they'll always remember it. And trust me, if it's able for them to work it into a conversation, they will remind you of it. So it will create this is where the revengeful patterns of thinking. They will not be able to control it. It will come from just below the 4th layer of the unconscious. But it'll always be there, the point where they want vindication. This is why they need to confess things before God. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, but rather give not place to the devil, but rather confess your sins. Make peace with God before the night goes down. If they are allowed to indulge their negative thinking patterns without being broken up, they have to be broken up. If they aren't pulled out of them, then what will happen is it will create a manic depressive state. So, as psychologists and counselors, the number one personality temperament that you're going to have with melancholies, it will be that they are the ones that are the manic depressives. They're the ones that are going to be on Prozac or Zoloft for life. They shouldn't be. They are normally very gentle in nature. But if a melancholy ever reaches the breaking point, which is pretty hard, they will have an angry outburst or an explosion like you've never seen. I've met people that have ripped a house apart because they finally had it, and when the last thing came down, that was it. I remember in the schoolyard, I grew up in a small school setting, and looking back, this child was a melancholy, and they picked on that boy, and they picked on that boy, and when he lost it, he whooped butt. They had opened a can of whoop butt that they did not want to ever do again, and they couldn't get away from it. You push that melancholy into the corner, and when it starts swinging, you will find out it has incredible abilities. I mean, they'll be the one that has watched Bruce Lee films their whole life and remembers them. So, knowing this, there is a bright side. As a melancholy ages, as they go through moods and changes in life, they will become what I would say one of the most settled, the most mature adults you can find, especially as they get older. The more they get older, the more they will transform. They are the one that God, the Holy Spirit, will work in their life to make them the most loving, caring, calm, peaceful, devoted Christians. They are what I would call the epitome and backbone of what God can do in a person's life. So, looking back on this, a melancholy is a person that you'll have as a friend for life. Melancholies are prone to negativity, pessimism. They're introverted, they're self-centered, highly analytical, very, shall we say, unsociable by nature. But yet, they're the most used by God. They have the ones for the greatest potential when God uses them. And you have to have a melancholy in every circle. If you're into music and you don't have melancholy in you, it's going to be pretty sterile music. So this is Dr. Tom Knotts. I hope that this helps you understand the melancholy mind. May the Lord bless you richly in all your endeavors to serve. Thank you.